The morning haze lifts, and suddenly the sky above you feels alive with the hum of thousands of voices. You blink against the sunlight, and there it is, the battlefield of Adwa spreading before your eyes. A sea of spears and shields stretching across the ridges. And this is where the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies strikes like lightning. You could almost taste the dust in your mouth as the first cannon roars, the boom echoing down the valley. But instead of scattering, the Ethiopian lines tighten. Farmers in worn tunics stand shoulder to shoulder with nobles in embroidered robes, their eyes fierce, their grips steady, as if the earth itself is holding them up. You see an odd detail that rattles you: a woman at the front, her long braid tied with a strip of red cloth, lifting her spear high and shouting words that ripple through the crowd. This is not a random moment of defiance. It is the signal for an entire regiment to surge forward, their shields rising in unison, the white of their cotton robes flashing like wings against the smoke. Across the field, the European soldiers try to hold their formation, muskets lifted, sabers drawn, but you sense fear behind their eyes. They had been promised a simple victory, and now they stand staring at a human wall that will not move back. The clash is deafening. Gunfire cracks, but when the smoke clears, the Ethiopians are closer, shields up, spears piercing through the gaps, swords flashing. The European officers shout orders, but their polished boots sink deeper into the mud. Their artillery wheels jam in the rocky soil. You see confusion spreading like wildfire lines tangled, signals lost, horses panicking under the screams of horns. Historians still debate whether it was strategy or sheer momentum that broke the invaders at Adwa. But as you stand in the chaos, you know it was both. And then it happens, the moment that turns the battle from struggle to humiliation. The Ethiopian flanks, hidden in gullies, rise all at once, charging from the sides with a roar that shakes the mountains. The Europeans are caught in a trap, their rifles too slow to reload, their cannons useless in the cramped terrain. You watch as their banners fall, one after another, trampled into the dirt. The shock on their faces is unforgettable. Men trained in European academies, armed with the latest technology, realizing in real time that they are being outmatched by farmers, priests, and shepherds who refuse to bow. The smell of iron fills your nostrils, not just from blood, but from shattered sabers clashing against spears. You catch sight of an Ethiopian commander raising a captured European sword, waving it like a trophy, and his men erupt in cheers. The chants grow louder, echoing through the valleys, mingling with drumbeats that seem to mock the invaders with every strike. Somewhere in the chaos, a European officer collapses to his knees, tearing at his collar as if trying to rip away the suffocating truth. This battle is lost. And yet, amid the chaos, your eyes are drawn to something stranger still. In the smoke, a monk walks calmly, holding a cross aloft, his lips moving in prayer. Bullets fly around him, but none strike true, and the soldiers nearby fight with renewed fury, as if shielded by invisible hands. Whether this is divine protection or the perfect illusion, you cannot tell, but you know it terrifies the Europeans who see it. Their morale cracks not only under spears and shields, but under the haunting thought that heaven itself has joined the battle. The ground beneath you shakes as a cannon explodes in its own smoke, the weapon overturned by desperate soldiers trying to save it. Horses scream, officers shout, but it all melts into one overpowering sound, the roar of Ethiopian victory sweeping like a storm across the valley. And in that moment, the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies reveals itself with brutal clarity. When a people refuse to kneel, when they wield their land, their faith, their rhythm, and their courage as weapons, no empire can crush them. You feel chills despite the heat, because you know you are witnessing not just a battle, but a rewriting of the balance of power, one that will echo far beyond these ridges. The battlefield smoke has barely cleared when you are swept into the aftermath. And suddenly, the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies takes a quieter, stranger form. You find yourself in a circle of warriors crouched low, their hands wrapped around steaming cups of thick black coffee. The aroma is bitter, almost burnt, but it seeps into your senses like fuel. This is no simple refreshment, it is a ritual, a binding force before the next clash. Each sip steadies their breath, sharpens their eyes, and you realize coffee is more than a drink here. It is a weapon of endurance. Historians still debate whether these coffee gatherings were strategic or symbolic, but as you hold the cup, the heat in your palms feels like another kind of fire running through your veins. You listen as drums echo in the distance, not random beats, but carefully measured codes. A single pulse signals scouts returning, a rolling thunder tells hidden flanks to prepare, and a sharp burst means the enemy has moved. You marvel at how quickly entire regiments shift direction, moving like shadows across the ridges, while European officers fumble with paper maps and shouted orders that never reach their men. The oddest part is that none of this is written. These rhythms are carried by memory, passed from father to son, monk to novice, soldier to soldier. You feel as though you are standing in the middle of a living codebook, one that no cipher expert in Europe could ever crack as night falls. The secrecy grows deeper. You hear whispers about spies moving between camps, women disguised as water carriers slipping through enemy lines, children selling fruit at the edge of the valley with ears sharper than knives. One returns with news of ration shortages in the European camp. Another brings details of officers quarreling over failed strategies. You glance at the Ethiopians, their faces unreadable, but you know this information will shape tomorrow's ambushes. The secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies isn't only in open battle. It hides in silence, in whispers, in the unnoticed footsteps of those no one suspects. Suddenly you notice another odd detail. Runner kneels before a commander, holding a strip of cloth marked with ash. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about something that has puzzled historians and startled empires for centuries. Asterisk, the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies. Asterisk. Imagine yourself standing under a burning African sun, the air shimmering with heat, the ground beneath your feet cracked like shattered porcelain, and in the distance, a line of soldiers approaches. They are Europeans, their muskets glinting, their cannons dragged behind horses, their officers wrapped in polished uniforms, as if their victory was already guaranteed. And then you turn your head and see what they are up against. Men in loose white cotton tunics, women carrying water jars, boys barely taller than their spears, priests waving crosses and chanting psalms. You probably won't survive this if you are foolish enough to stand in the middle, because what looks like ragged chaos is about to become one of the most shocking turnarounds in military history. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Post it in the comments, because this story has stretched across time zones and continents for more than 100 years. Now let's embark on today's secret history journey together. You shuffle your feet in the dust as horns begin to blare. Not the brass trumpets of Europe, but hollow wooden horns that echo like a mountain itself is crying out. The sound unsettles you. It rattles your chest. And then you realize the smoke rising is not from a campfire. It's from lines of warriors burning, grass to blind their enemies. Suddenly, the gleam of European rifles doesn't feel as invincible as the stories claimed. These warriors are not rushing headlong into gunfire. They are circling. They are vanishing into gullies. They are pulling you toward the jagged ridges where cannons can't pivot. The modern army looks confused, stumbling in their heavy boots, while the Ethiopians move as if the land itself carries them. You blink and see an odd detail, a young boy no older than 12 beating a goatskin drum. and somehow entire regiments are shifting in response to his rhythm. It feels impossible that such simple tools could outwit artillery. Yet here, it is happening right before your eyes. You lean closer, sweat dripping, and hear the muttering among the European lines. They were promised an easy victory, told these Africans would scatter at the sound of muskets. Instead, every shot fired only makes the chants louder. Every cannonball that sails harmlessly into the hills is answered with a spear hurled from an unseen angle. And then a cross rises above the smoke, held by a monk with a beard as wild as the mountain wind, his eyes fierce as he waves it toward the enemy lines. The soldiers next to you freeze for a moment. Are they fighting men, or are they fighting faith itself? Historians still debate whether the answer was divine protection or clever tactics. But standing here, you feel both. The secret begins to dawn on you. It's not just weapons or numbers, it's a mindset. You can sense that these warriors believe their cause is larger than life, larger than empire, larger even than survival. The Europeans are calculating ammunition, but the Ethiopians are calculating destiny. The oddest thing is that this confidence feels contagious, as though if you picked up a spear right now, the land would carry you forward, and the mountain would echo your voice. That is the beginning of why Ethiopia, unlike so many others, refused to bow. The battle has not yet reached its climax, but already you see the cracks. A European officer wipes his brow and curses the heat, his polished boots sinking in the dirt, while opposite him, a farmer barefoot on the rocks grins with the knowledge of every ridge and stream. You realize that the secret answer is not a single trick, but 1,000 small advantages, stitched together with stubborn courage. From the rhythm of the drums to the glint of crosses, from the blinding smoke to the simple shield that turns a bullet aside, this fight is not going the way the invaders imagined. You stand in the middle of history's stage, and the curtain is rising on a drama that will change how the world sees Africa forever. The ground still trembles beneath your sandals as you walk with the shield bearers, and here you finally understand why people later whispered about the asterisk's secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies asterisk. It wasn't just brute force or divine chance. It was ingenuity stitched into every hide and every spear. You look closely at the shield in your hand, stretched from the hide of a buffalo, polished with ash and oil until it glimmers like stone. When a musket ball smacks against it, instead of shattering, the hide bends, absorbs, and spits the bullet off at an angle. The shock in the eyes of European soldiers is priceless. They were taught these shields would be nothing but toys against lead. Yet here you are, standing tall with hide and faith as your armor. The air grows thick with smoke, but it isn't cannon smoke. The Ethiopians set bundles of brush alight, tossing them into valleys so that the enemy can no longer see their formations. Through the haze, horns wail and drums thunder, and you realize these sounds are not random. They are codes, messages carried across ridges faster than any European officer on horseback could shout. A single drumbeat changes the direction of an entire flank, while a horn blast signals a feint, a retreat, or a sudden charge. You see bewildered European officers staring, unable to decipher the rhythm, like chess masters suddenly trapped in a game they don't understand. Then comes the strangest detail of all. You notice horns made from hollowed-out animal tusks painted with soot and blood, and when they blast, the sound mimics the roar of thousands. Horses panic, European lines stagger, and in that moment you feel the battlefield tilt in your favor. It dawns on you that the Ethiopians have transformed simple tools into weapons of psychology, shaking the enemy before a spear is even thrown. You grip your shield tighter, smell the burning grass, and wonder why no European manual ever prepared its soldiers for this kind of war. At your side, a warrior kneels, tracing a line in the dirt with his spearhead. He points to the ridge above and nods, as though every stone and shadow has already been memorized. You realize geography itself is a weapon. The mountains of Ethiopia are not merely a backdrop. They are fortresses, traps, and allies. The Europeans used to flat plains and open sieges, march straight into ravines where muskets jam in the damp air and cannons topple on uneven rocks. You hear their curses carried by the wind, while the Ethiopians move as though born of the land. Historians still debate whether this was luck or mastery, but standing here, you know it is both. You take a step forward as volleys of musket fire crack overhead, and yet, behind the shields, the lines hold. A spear whistles past your ear, striking a European officer in the chest, and his men falter. Their polished boots sink in the mud, their glittering sabers grow dull in the smoke. In contrast, the Ethiopians fight barefoot, gripping the earth, reading its every tremor. You can almost hear the land itself whispering instructions to them, guiding their rhythm, their advance, their retreat. The secret answer is becoming clearer. Europe's machines crumble when faced with Africa's living terrain and minds attuned to it. The clash intensifies, and suddenly you notice another oddity. Some warriors carry jars of hornet nests sealed with clay. At the height of the charge, they smash them open and hurl them into enemy lines. Stinging chaos erupts, horses buck, soldiers scream, muskets fall. You laugh in disbelief, but also shiver, because nothing in the manuals of European war ever accounted for nature itself joining the fight. As you raise your shield again, you realize victory isn't about matching the enemy weapon for weapon, but about rewriting the very rules of battle. The chants rise louder now, priests weaving scripture into strategy, and the Europeans' once proud formations dissolve into scattered confusion. Through the smoke and buzzing, through the shouts and drum beats, you feel the tide turning. What was supposed to be an overwhelming display of European firepower has become a theater of humiliation. And you, standing among the shield bearers, see the secret answer etched into every strike, every trick, every echo of the horns. Ethiopia has refused to fight on Europe's terms. Instead, it has forced Europe to drown in a storm of faith, land, and cunning. You follow the trail of dust toward a clearing where the real minds of the campaign are revealed, and the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies takes on yet another layer. It wasn't just the shields or the smoke, it was the curious fusion of politics, faith, and strategy woven together by kings and monks who refused to play by imperial scripts. You stand in the courtyard of a hilltop church, its stone walls cool against the heat, and before you sits a monarch dressed not in glittering armor, but in a white robe stitched with crosses. Beside him, monks barefoot and gaunt from fasting lean close, whispering tactics while clutching holy books. The Europeans may have marched with generals trained in academies, but here you see a kind of authority that binds soldiers in ways no manual could. The king's hand moves, across a map scratched into the earth, stones for mountains, sticks for rivers, and you realize that the land itself is his textbook. His monks chant psalms not just for prayer, but for rhythm, their voices rising in time with the drumming outside. The soldiers waiting in the fields below kneel to receive blessings before charging into the smoke. And you notice something odd. Some even carry small painted icons tied to their shields, believing no bullet could pierce a cross blessed by holy water. Historians still debate whether this was superstition or psychological steel, but as you watch, you cannot deny the effect. When a man believes his soul is shielded, he fights like a storm. You glance at the Europeans across the valley, their generals arguing in clipped tones, frustrated that their carefully drafted strategies crumble against men guided by chance and visions. One officer scoffs at the sight of priests waving crosses, but then his face changes when he realizes the soldiers are surging with renewed fury, unwilling to give an inch. You hear him mutter that no academy ever taught how to counter faith, and you smirk at his despair. The secret answer, you realize, is not only material, it is spiritual defiance, turned into military fuel. As night falls, torches flicker around the camp, and you taste bitter coffee boiling in iron pots. This is no idle drink. It is the ritual that keeps warriors awake and steady through the long hours before dawn. Around you, monks move from man to man, reminding them of the history of Ethiopia, of kings who resisted Rome, of ancestors who guarded the Ark of the Covenant. Every sip of coffee becomes more than caffeine. It is a reminder that survival is tied to identity. The Europeans may have rifles, but the Ethiopians carry centuries of unbroken memory. At one corner of the camp, you notice an unusual sight. A monk kneeling beside a stack of letters captured from enemy couriers. He cannot read Portuguese perfectly, but he deciphers enough to warn the king of supply shortages, of confused movements, of a coming attack at dawn. You blink. Did monks just become the intelligence service? The next morning, when European columns stumble into an ambush, you know the answer. The supposed ragged priests are, in fact, the unseen strategists turning scripture into a codebook. The drums resume, echoing across valleys, and you see how seamlessly command passes between monarch and monk. The king raises a hand, the priests chant louder, and soldiers surge forward as though the divine itself had given the order. You realize you are witnessing a strange symphony. Faith is the melody, strategy is the rhythm, and courage is the lyrics. Against this chorus, the European officers' shouting commands sound almost flat, like broken instruments. The clash is brutal, yet mesmerizing. Spears slam against rifles, but each time the Europeans reload, the Ethiopians shift, retreat, or counterattack, as though guided by an invisible hand. You look at the monks again, their eyes fixed on the smoke, lips moving silently, and wonder if their prayers are also calculations. Historians still debate whether it was divine protection or tactical genius, but as you stand in the dust, the boundary between the two blurs. By dawn, the battlefield feels transformed. European confidence has dimmed, their supply wagons abandoned, their cannons stuck in ravines, while Ethiopian warriors, fueled by coffee and chants, surge with new energy. And you, caught between king and monk, realize the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies lies not only in clever tricks or the terrain, it lies in the unshakable fusion of throne and altar, where war becomes both a duty and a prayer. At first it seems meaningless, but when the commander ties it to his spear, an entire wing of soldiers shifts into position. These codes, blending symbols, sounds, and smoke signals, create a battlefield language invisible to outsiders. The Europeans see only chaos, but you now recognize the choreography. Every drum beat, every horn blast, every flicker of fire is a word in a tongue the invaders will never learn. The moon rises, and you hear the low hum of chants drifting through the camp. Warriors bow their heads, monks walk among them, and for a moment, the battlefield feels like a cathedral of the open sky. The sound rolls into your bones, merging with the distant drums, until you can no longer tell where prayer ends and strategy begins. The Europeans across the valley sit in tense silence, clutching their rifles, unable to sleep as the strange music of faith and defiance drifts over their camp. They had believed Ethiopia would bow like others had bowed, but the rhythm you hear tonight tells you otherwise. And then dawn breaks with a suddenness that startles you. Horns bellow, drums roll, and once again the lines surge forward, guided not by shouted commands, but by sound, rhythm, and trust. You watch the Europeans stumble, shouting in panic as their own orders dissolve in the din. In their confusion, you spot Ethiopian warriors breaking through with uncanny timing, striking precisely where the enemy is weakest. This is no accident. It is the invisible web of codes, whispers, and rituals pulling the strings of the battle. As you raise your eyes toward the mountains, you realize the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies lies in their refusal to fight alone. The land fights with them, the faith strengthens them, the coffee fuels them, the drums guide them, and even silence itself becomes a blade against their enemies. You stand there, heart racing, certain now that what seems simple on the surface is in fact a labyrinth of hidden forces. And it dawns on you, this is not just war. This is survival turned into an art form, one that no empire can easily erase. The sun climbs high, but instead of brightness, you feel a strange chill crawl across your skin, because what happens next may be the most unsettling part of the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies. You are no longer staring at clashing steel or roaring drums. You are staring at something harder to grasp, the invisible weight of belief. On one ridge, cannons gleam in the sunlight, their barrels aimed, their crews confident. And then across the valley, a line of priests steps forward, crosses raised high, chanting in voices that roll like thunder. The two forces meet in silence for a moment, gunpowder versus faith, fire versus song, and you cannot look away. The cannon roars, smoke belches, the ground trembles, and yet the chants only grow louder. You swear you see a young warrior smile as shrapnel rips into the earth near his feet. He lifts his spear and shouts a song, and suddenly an entire regiment surges forward, not because the odds are good, but because their spirits are unbroken. You feel your throat tighten. This is not just courage, it is defiance wearing the armor of faith. Historians still debate whether the European retreat was caused by sheer numbers, tactical traps, or the unnerving effect of that spiritual wall. But standing here, you know the truth might be all three, and an odd sight makes your heart lurch. A monk walks barefoot across the battlefield, his robe whipping in the wind, holding a book aloft as bullets zip past. Not one touches him. Around him, warriors roar with renewed fury, their energy doubling, their movements sharper. The Europeans hesitate, their rifles raised, but the hesitation is enough. The line crumbles. You wonder if the monk was simply lucky, or if something greater shielded him. And the not knowing gnaws at you in the confusion. You notice soldiers tying strips of white cloth to their heads. It seems meaningless, until you see how it changes their enemies' faces. Suddenly the Europeans whisper of ghost warriors who cannot die. Panic spreads, muskets misfire, sabers fall from trembling hands. And in that instant, the oddest truth hits you. Fear is a weapon sharper than any blade. The Ethiopians wield it with precision, blending rumor and ritual until even the bravest invader begins to doubt his own senses. The air thickens with dust, heat, and prayer. You cough, stumble, and then hear the blast of horns rolling down the valley, deeper and harsher than before. It feels like the mountain itself has spoken. European officers shout frantically, their orders lost in the noise, and you see men dropping weapons, retreating not from wounds, but from terror. The battlefield has become a theater of the mind, and you realize this is the heart of the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies. They mastered not only the ground beneath their feet, but the battlefield inside their enemies' minds. You glance at the priests again, their faces calm, their voices steady, and suddenly it occurs to you that this was never just a war of bullets and spears. This was a war of worlds colliding, one powered by gunpowder and colonial arrogance, the other powered by an unshakable conviction that no empire could own their destiny. The smoke clears just enough for you to see European banners falling into the dust, trampled under sandals and bare feet, and it feels as though history itself has chosen its victor. Still, even as the invaders scatter, the debate continues in your head. Was it numbers? Was it strategy? Was it faith? Historians will argue forever, and maybe that is the true mystery. But you, standing in the dust with the chants still echoing in your ears, feel the secret answer carved into your bones. Ethiopia's strength was not a single blade or shield, but a spirit that refused to break, a unity that turned the impossible into the inevitable. The battlefield finally falls silent, and the silence is almost more deafening than the roar of cannons. You step carefully over broken sabers and shattered drums, the air still thick with the smell of smoke and sweat, and you realize you are walking through the living proof of the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies. The once proud invaders have vanished down the ridges, their banners abandoned, their cannons left behind like useless relics. And in their place stand men and women with calloused hands, worn tunics, and eyes blazing with triumph, as though they have just wrestled history itself into submission. You catch sight of an odd detail that makes you stop. A young boy, no older than 13, sits on a fallen cannon wheel, carving lines into a piece of wood with a knife. He is not celebrating wildly like the others. Instead, he works quietly, marking the moment as though recording it for the future. It dawns on you that this victory is not just for today, it is for tomorrow. For every child who will grow up knowing that Ethiopia stood tall when empires tried to break it. Historians still debate whether Adwa's echo was more political than military, but when you watch that boy carving in silence, you know the answer doesn't matter. The spirit is already immortal. The survivors gather around fires, and you hear them retell the day in voices trembling with pride. Farmers describe how they tricked riflemen with smoke. Monks explain how chants never faltered, and commanders remind their men that the mountains fought with them. One warrior raises a captured European saber high, the blade flashing orange in the firelight, and the crowd erupts in cheers. You feel the ground tremble with the weight of their voices, a chant of unity that no empire could silence. As night deepens, you notice something unusual. Women who carried water jars during the fight now step forward, singing songs that twist sorrow and joy together. Their melodies float across the valley, weaving with the crackle of flames, turning the battlefield into something holy. You realize that Ethiopia's victory was not just won by men with spears, but by an entire people who refused to kneel. That collective defiance is the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies, and you feel a chill of awe run down your spine. You glance toward the horizon and imagine the shockwaves rippling outward. Across Africa, whispers spread. Ethiopia has done the impossible. In Asia and the Caribbean, colonized peoples hear the news and dream of their own Adwa. Even in Europe, newspapers struggle to explain how farmers and priests had humiliated generals with academies and rifles. You sense that this single day has shifted the world's balance, planting seeds of resistance that will bloom for generations. The secret answer is no longer a secret. It is a beacon. The fires burn low, and the chanting softens into murmurs. You sit among the warriors, your body exhausted, but your mind racing, and you realize the lesson is bigger than any battlefield. Victory did not come from matching Europe's firepower, but from rewriting the rules, from refusing to let others define strength. The land, the faith, the unity, the cunning all fused into a force that no empire could withstand. You feel humbled, as though the mountains themselves are reminding you that power is never absolute, that arrogance always crumbles, that the human spirit is the sharpest weapon of all. And so the night deepens, the stars spread across the Ethiopian sky, and you lean back on the earth, letting the chants and songs blur into a hum that soothes the wounds of the day. You realize that while weapons rust and banners fade, the true victory is carved into memory, carried in every story retold by firesides, in every whisper across continents, in every dream of freedom sparked by this triumph. That, in the end, is the final secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies. They turned survival into legacy, defiance into inspiration, and faith into a weapon that will never be forgotten. The fire has dimmed to glowing embers, and now the pace slows. You breathe more gently, the clamor of battle fading into a soft rhythm in your mind. And the secret answer to how Ethiopian warriors defeated European armies becomes less about struggle and more about peace. You imagine lying back in the grass of the highlands, the cool air brushing across your face, the stars spilling over the sky like scattered grains of salt. The land that carried warriors through storms now cradles you as if it remembers, as if it has chosen to protect you too. The drums are no longer war codes. They are distant heartbeats blending into the night, steady and calm. The voices of priests that once roared defiance now murmur like lullabies. You let the images blur. The smoke becomes mist. The chants become wind. The clash of steel melts into silence. In this stillness, you feel safe, as though nothing could disturb the quiet strength around you. The lesson of resilience lingers, but without sharp edges. It soothes instead of stirs. And as your eyes grow heavy, you let the last echoes of Ethiopia's secret victory fade into dreams, carrying with them the warmth of fire, the calm of mountains, and the whisper that no empire lasts forever. End of script. Wishing you much joy and health.